The Galactic Exchange Program. Zora Mitchell stood at the viewport of the interstellar shuttle, her heart racing with a mixture of excitement and trepidation. The swirling, iridescent nebula outside was a stark reminder of just how far she was from Earth. As the first human to be accepted into the Intergalactic Academy of Survival Sciences, she felt the weight of her species' reputation resting squarely on her shoulders. Approaching final descent to Nexus Prime, the ship's AI announced, its voice a soothing counterpoint to Zora's jangling nerves. "All passengers, please secure yourselves for landing procedures." Zora took a deep breath and strapped herself into the nearest seat. Her fellow passengers, a diverse array of alien species she was still struggling to identify, did the same, their appendages and sensory organs moving in ways that defied her understanding of anatomy. As the shuttle broke through the planet's atmosphere, Zora caught her first glimpse of the Academy. It was a sprawling complex of gleaming structures that seemed to defy gravity, with spiraling towers and suspended walkways that glittered in the light of Nexus Prime's twin suns. It was beautiful, awe-inspiring, and utterly terrifying. The landing was smoother than any Zora had experienced on Earth, a testament to the advanced technology at play. As the passengers began to disembark, Zora hung back, suddenly unsure of herself. She'd spent months preparing for this moment, studying alien customs and protocols, but now that she was here, she felt woefully unprepared. "Excuse me," a melodious voice chirped from behind her. "Are you the human exchange student?" Zora turned to find herself face to face, or rather, face to sensory cluster, with a being that resembled nothing so much as a sentient, shimmering mist. Two glowing orbs that she assumed were eyes regarded her with what she hoped was curiosity rather than distaste. "Yes, that's me," Zora replied, trying to keep the tremor out of her voice. "Zora Mitchell, from Earth. And you are?" The mist being pulsed with soft light. "I am Sinra, third cycle student and your assigned orientation guide. Welcome to Nexus Prime and the Intergalactic Academy of Survival Sciences." Zora felt a wave of relief wash over her. At least she wouldn't be completely alone in navigating this alien world. "It's nice to meet you, Sinra. I have to admit, I'm feeling a bit overwhelmed." Sinra's form rippled in what Zora hoped was a gesture of understanding. That is to be expected. The Academy can be quite intense for newcomers, especially those from isolated worlds such as your own. But do not worry, I will help you acclimate. As they made their way through the spaceport, Zora couldn't help but notice the stares and whispers that followed her. Some aliens recoiled as she passed, while others leaned in, seemingly fascinated by her solid form and bilateral symmetry. "Is it always like this?" Zora whispered to Sinra. "The staring, I mean." Sinra's misty form condensed slightly, which Zora interpreted as the alien equivalent of a shrug. "Humans are something of a curiosity in the galactic community. Your species is classified as a Deathworlder, you know." Zora blinked in surprise. "A Deathworlder? What does that mean?" "It means," Sinra explained, "that your home planet is considered extremely hostile by galactic standards. High gravity, extreme temperature variations, dangerous wildlife, unpredictable weather patterns. Earth is a veritable nightmare to most species." Zora couldn't help but laugh. "And here I thought we had it pretty good. I guess it's all a matter of perspective." As they approached the Academy's main entrance, an imposing figure blocked their path. It was vaguely humanoid in shape, but its skin was a mottled green and covered in what looked like armored plates. 4 arms, each ending in wickedly sharp claws, were folded across its broad chest. "So," the creature rumbled, its voice like gravel in a cement mixer, "this is the human we've heard so much about. Doesn't look like much, does it?" Zora felt a flash of indignation, but before she could respond, Sinra interposed itself between them. "Professor Krogath, this is Zora Mitchell, our new exchange student from Earth." "Zora, this is Professor Krogath, head of Extreme Environment Survival Techniques." Krogath's yellow eyes narrowed as they swept over Zara. "I've reviewed your application, human. Impressive credentials for your species, I'll grant you that. But this isn't some backwater survival course. The environments we train for would liquefy your organs in seconds." Zara straightened her spine, meeting the professor's gaze without flinching. "With all due respect, Professor, I'm here to learn. If I wanted an easy ride, I'd have stayed on my backwater planet." For a moment, tension crackled in the air like static electricity. Then, to Zara's surprise, Krogath's face split into what she hoped was a grin, revealing rows of needle-sharp teeth. "Ha, maybe there's hope for you yet, human. We'll see how long that spirit lasts when you're facing down a hexapodian acid beast." As Krogath lumbered away, Zara let out a breath she hadn't realized she'd been holding. Is he always that intense? Sinra's form shimmered with what might have been amusement. Professor Krogath is known for his direct approach, but do not let his demeanor fool you. He is one of the finest survival experts in the galaxy. As they continued their tour of the academy, Zara's head spun with the sheer alienness of it all. Classrooms with gravity that shifted unpredictably, training simulations that assaulted all 5, and sometimes 6 or 7, senses, and a cafeteria that served food that was still alive and trying to escape. By the time they reached the dormitories, Zara was exhausted but exhilarated. This was everything she dreamed of and more. As she settled into her room, thankfully adjusted to Earth-standard gravity and atmosphere, she couldn't help but feel a surge of pride. She was here, representing humanity in this vast, incredible universe. A soft chime indicated an incoming message on her datapad. It was her class schedule for the next day, starting with basics of vacuum survival at the crack of dawn. Zara grinned. She had a feeling things were about to get very interesting. As she drifted off to sleep, her last thought was of Earth, so far away and yet, in many ways, the perfect training ground for whatever the galaxy might throw at her. She was a Deathworlder after all, and she was ready to show the universe exactly what that meant. First contact with extreme environments. The piercing shriek of an alarm jolted Zara from her sleep. For a disorienting moment, she forgot where she was, the unfamiliar scents and sounds of her alien dormitory flooding her senses. Then reality snapped back into focus. She was on Nexus Prime, at the Intergalactic Academy of Survival Sciences, and apparently she was late for her first class. Warning: atmospheric decompression drill in progress. All students report to designated safe zones immediately, an AI voice announced, its tone unlovingly calm given the urgency of the message. Zara scrambled out of bed, heart pounding. This wasn't in the orientation packet. She fumbled for the environmental suit she'd been issued, its sleek, almost liquid-like material slipping through her fingers as she tried to put it on. A rapid knock at her door made her jump. "Zara, are you awake?" It was Skinra, their misty form seeping under the door in their haste. "We must hurry." "I'm coming," Zara called back, finally managing to seal her suit. She burst out of her room, nearly colliding with a group of alien students rushing past. Their forms were a blur of tentacles, exoskeletons, and things she couldn't even begin to describe. Sinray enveloped her in a protective mist. "This way." Professor Krogath's idea of a pop quiz. "I'm afraid he likes to start the term with a shock." They raced through corridors that were rapidly depressurizing, the air thinning with each passing second. Zara's suit automatically compensated, but she could feel the pressure changes in her ears and sinuses. Around her, some students were already struggling, their bodies not adapted to such rapid shifts. They reached a large chamber just as the last of the breathable atmosphere was sucked away. Inside, Professor Krogath stood impassively, his armored form seemingly unaffected by the vacuum. His voice crackled through their suit comms. "Congratulations to those who made it," he rumbled, yellow eyes sweeping the room. "For the rest, well, they'll be joining us shortly from the medical bay. Lesson 1. In space, hesitation equals death." Zara's mind reeled. This was certainly not how class orientations went back on Earth. She glanced around, noting with a mix of relief and concern that most of her classmates had made it. A few empty spots in the room told a different story. "Now then," Krogath continued, "welcome to Basics of Vacuum Survival. Today we'll be taking a little field trip." A collective groan went up from the class, but Zara felt a thrill of excitement. This was what she'd come for after all. The little field trip turned out to be a short shuttle ride to Nexus Prime's smallest moon, a barren, airless rock that made Earth's moon look like a lush paradise. As they disembarked onto the dusty surface, Zara marveled at the stark beauty of the place. The stars blazed overhead with an intensity she'd never seen before, unfiltered by atmosphere. "Your task," Krogath announced, his voice filling the helmet comms, "is simple. Make it to the beacon on the far side of this crater." He gestured to a distant flashing light, barely visible on the horizon. "First one that passes the course. Anyone who doesn't make it." He paused for effect. "Well, let's just say you'll be getting very familiar with the taste of vacuum rations for the next few cycles." With that ominous warning, he activated his suit's propulsion system and sewed away, leaving the students to fend for themselves. Zara took a deep breath, centering herself. She could do this. She'd trained for low-gravity environments back on Earth, even if this was the real deal. She took a tentative hop, marveling at how far it propelled her. Around her, chaos erupted. Some students activated similar propulsion systems to Krogath's, shooting off in ungainly arcs. Others, with biology more suited to the environment, simply started bounding across the surface with ease. A few, however, seemed paralyzed with fear or indecision. Sinra materialized beside her, their misty form contained within a transparent bubble. "What's your plan, Zara? This environment isn't exactly suited to your physiology." Zara grinned inside her helmet. "Maybe not, but we humans have a saying, work smarter, not harder." She began to bounce across the surface in long, measured leaps, using the moon's low gravity to her advantage, but not fighting against it like some of her classmates with their erratic propulsion. She'd noticed something the others seemed to have missed in their panic, a series of small craters and ridges that formed a nearly straight line to the beacon. As she bounded from crater to crater, using their rims to redirect her momentum, she began to overtake her classmates. Those who had shot ahead with propulsion were now struggling, their systems overheating or running low on fuel. The naturally adapted species were fast, but they were taking a more circuitous route. Halfway to the beacon, disaster struck. A meteor shower, invisible until it was nearly upon them, began to pepper the moon's surface. Zara watched in horror as two of her classmates were struck, their suits rupturing in explosive decompressions. Emergency protocols activated, Krogath's voice boomed over the comms. "This is not a drill. Repeat, this is not a drill." For a moment, Zara hesitated. The beacon was so close, and every competitive instinct in her body screamed to press on. But she couldn't leave her classmates behind. Making a split-second decision, she altered her course, bounding towards the nearest stricken student. It was a bulbous, tentacled being she vaguely recognized from orientation. Its suit was hissing atmosphere from a jagged tear, the creature's flesh bulging obscenely through the hole. Zara reached the alien just as Finra arrived. "We need to seal the breach," she shouted over the comms. "Sinra, can you use your mist to plug the hole temporarily?" The gaseous alien didn't hesitate, extending a tendril of their form into the tear. "It won't hold for long," they warned. Zara's mind raced. Her suit had an emergency patch kit, but it wasn't designed for non-human anatomies. She'd have to improvise. With quick, precise movements, she applied the patch over Xinra's mist, using the alien's form as a flexible sealant. "That should hold until we get back to the shuttle," she said, helping the injured alien to its feet, or what passed for feet. "Can you make it?" The creature gave a wobbling gesture that Zara interpreted as a nod. Together, the three of them began making their way back to the landing site, Zara keeping one eye on the injured classmate and another on the continuing meteor shower. They were the last to return to the shuttle, the rest of the class watching in tense silence as they helped their injured comrade aboard. As the airlock cycled and atmosphere returned, Zara finally allowed herself to relax. Professor Krogath was waiting for them, his expression unreadable. "Interesting choice, human," he rumbled. "You're on track to win, you know." Zara met his gaze steadily. "With all due respect, sir, where I come from, we don't leave people behind. Ever." For a long moment, Krogath stared at her. Then, to everyone's shock, he burst out laughing. "Oh, this is going to be an interesting term indeed. Congratulations, Miss Mitchell. You just passed your first real test at the academy." As the shuttle lifted off, heading back to the relative safety of Nexus Prime, Zara felt a mix of emotions washing over her. Pride at having survived her first true extraterrestrial challenge, concern for her injured classmates, and underneath it all, a growing excitement. This was just the beginning, she realized. The galaxy had thrown its first challenge at her, and she'd not only survived but thrived. Whatever came next, she was ready for it. After all, she was a Deathworlder, and Deathworlders don't back down from a challenge, the Undersea Challenge. Weeks had passed since the vacuum survival exercise, and Zara found herself settling into a routine at the Intergalactic Academy. Her days were filled with classes on exotic atmospheres, lectures on multi-dimensional navigation, and practical exercises in gravity manipulation. To her surprise, she was excelling in most subjects, her Deathworlder physiology and adaptability giving her an edge in many scenarios. But today was different. As Zara entered the cavernous simulation chamber, she felt a twinge of anxiety. The room was filled with what looked like enormous, shimmering bubbles, each one a self-contained ecosystem. Students were gathering around a particularly massive sphere that seemed to ripple with deep blues and greens. "Gather round, lava," Professor Krogath's gravelly voice boomed across the chamber. Today, we dive into the depths of Aquarius Prime, one of the most hostile aquatic environments in the known galaxy. Zara's heart raced. Water. Of course it had to be water. She was a strong swimmer, but this was something else entirely. The alien ocean inside the bubble looked more like liquid metal than water, its surface roiling with strange bioluminescent patterns. Sinra materialized beside her, their misty form condensing slightly in the humid air of the chamber. "You seem tense, Zara. Is everything all right?" Zara tried to smile, but it came out more like a grimace. "Just not a big fan of deep water," she admitted, "especially not alien deep water that looks like it wants to eat me." A ripple passed through Sinra's form, their equivalent of a chuckle. "Ah, yes. I forgot that humans have an irrational fear of large bodies of water, despite being mostly composed of it yourselves. How charmingly contradictory." Before Zara could retort, Professor Krogath continued his briefing. "Your task is simple. Reach the bottom of the abyssal trench, retrieve a sample of the bioluminescent crystal found there, and return to the surface. First team back with an intact sample passes." He paused, his yellow eyes sweeping over the assembled students. "Oh, and do try not to get eaten by the local fauna. The paperwork is a nightmare." With that cheerful send-off, the students began to don their aquatic gear. Zara's suit was a marvel of alien engineering, fitting her like a second skin and adapting to her body temperature and movements. A crystalline helmet formed around her head, its transparent material offering an unobstructed view, while somehow processing the alien water to make it breathable. As teams of 2 and 3 began to enter the shimmering bubble, Zara found herself partnered with Sinra and a towering amphibious alien named Grax. The latter's webbed appendages and gills made it clear he was in his element. "Try not to slow us down, human," Grax gurgled, his voice distorted by the breathing apparatus he wore despite his natural adaptations. "I intend to win this challenge." Zara bit back a sharp reply. She'd faced enough skepticism over the past weeks to know when to pick her battles. "Let's just focus on working together, shall we?" With a deep breath, Zara stepped into the bubble. The sensation was indescribable, like plunging into liquid electricity. Every nerve in her body tingled as she was submerged in the alien ocean. The world beneath the surface was a riot of color and movement. Bioluminescent creatures darted past, their lights pulsing in hypnotic patterns. Massive, undulating plants reached up from the depths, their tendrils grasping at anything that came too close. Grax took the lead, his powerful limbs propelling him through the water with ease. Sinra's gaseous form had condensed into a more streamlined shape, allowing them to slip through the currents like a living torpedo. Zara brought up the rear, her suit's propulsion system helping her keep pace. As they descended deeper, the ambient light faded, replaced by the eerie glow of deep-sea creatures. Zara's suit automatically adjusted, enhancing her vision to compensate for the darkness. The pressure was immense, and she could feel the suit working overtime to maintain her body's integrity. Suddenly, Grax came to an abrupt halt, causing Zara to nearly collide with him. "There," he gurgled, pointing to a narrow crevice in the rock face beside them. "The trench. We're close." As they maneuvered towards the opening, Zara's suit sensors began to flash warnings. "Wait," she called out. "Something's not right. The water composition is changing." Grax scoffed, the sound bubbling through his breathing apparatus. "Nonsense. My gills detect nothing amiss." But Sinra paused, their form rippling with concern. "Zara might be right. My outer membrane is detecting increasing acidity." Before they could debate further, the water around them began to churn. From the depths of the trench, a massive shape emerged, a creature that seemed to be made entirely of mouths and tentacles, each appendage ending in a gnashing maw filled with razor-sharp teeth. "Abyssal Leviathan," Grax shouted, panic evident in his voice. "Swim for your lives." The creature lashed out, its tentacles whipping through the water with terrifying speed. Grax's superior swimming abilities allowed him to dodge easily, but Zara found herself struggling against the suddenly turbulent currents. A tentacle wrapped around her leg, yanking her towards one of the creature's larger mouths. Panic threatened to overwhelm her, but Zara forced herself to think. She remembered her survival training, both from Earth and her recent classes. With a swift movement, she detached a small canister from her belt, an emergency flare designed for underwater use. She activated it, and a blinding, searing light erupted in the darkness. The Leviathan recoiled, its tentacle loosening just enough for Zara to break free. But the danger wasn't over. The creature's thrashing had disturbed the seafloor, sending up clouds of sediment that obscured their vision and played havoc with their suit's sensors. "The crystals." Sinra's voice crackled through the comm system. "They're reacting to the disturbance." Sure enough, the rock face was beginning to glow, lines of bioluminescent energy pulsing through the stone like veins. It was beautiful, mesmerizing, and incredibly dangerous. The energy readings were off the charts. Zara's mind raced. The crystals, the Leviathan, the acidic water, it all clicked into place. "It's a defense mechanism," she shouted. "The whole ecosystem is designed to protect the crystals." Grax, who had been preparing to make a desperate grab for a protruding crystal, paused. "What are you talking about, human?" "Think about it," Zara explained, her words coming fast as she dodged another swipe from the Leviathan. "The acidic water, the predators, they're all here to keep the crystals safe. We can't just take them by force." Sinra's form pulsed with realization. "Of course, but how do we retrieve a sample without triggering the defenses?" Zara's gaze fell on the flare, still burning brightly in her hand. An idea formed, crazy, dangerous, but just might work. "We give it what it wants," she said. "Light." Before her teammates could protest, Zara swam towards the glowing rock face. The Leviathan, momentarily blinded by the flare, didn't immediately pursue. As she approached the pulsing crystals, Zara held out the flare, moving it in a pattern that mimicked the bioluminescent creatures they'd seen earlier. To everyone's amazement, the crystals began to resonate with the light, their glow intensifying. Slowly, carefully, Zara reached out with her free hand. A small cluster of crystals detached easily, almost eagerly, from the rock face. "It's working," Sinra exclaimed. But their victory was short-lived. The Leviathan, recovering from its disorientation, was closing in fast. Grax, seeing their chance slipping away, made a sudden grab for the crystals in Zara's hand. "No, wait," Zara cried, but it was too late. The abrupt movement shattered the delicate harmony she'd established. The crystals flared with blinding intensity, and the entire cavern began to shake. "Cave in," Grax shouted. "We need to get out of here." As chunks of glowing rock began to rain down around them, Zara made a split-second decision. She shoved the crystal sample into Grax's webbed hands. "Go, get to the surface." "But what about you?" Shinra asked, their misty forms swirling with concern. Zara was already swimming back towards the Leviathan, flare in hand. "I'll distract it. Buy you some time. Now go." As her teammates reluctantly began their ascent, Zara faced the monstrous creature. Its many mouths gnashed in anticipation, tentacles reaching for her. But Zara wasn't afraid anymore. She was a Deathworlder after all, and Deathworlders don't go down without a fight. With a burst of speed, she swam straight for the Leviathan's central mass, flare burning bright. At the last moment, she dodged, using the creature's own tentacles as cover from the falling debris. The Leviathan, confused and angry, began to thrash wildly, its massive body acting as a shield against the cave-in. Zara maneuvered through the chaos, her suit's sensors guiding her towards clearer water. She could see the shimmering surface far above, growing closer with each powerful stroke. As she burst through the surface of the simulation bubble, gasping for breath, she was met with stunned silence. Then gradually, a cheer went up from her classmates. Even Professor Krogath looked impressed, his craggy features arranged in what might have been a smile. Sinray and Grax were there, the crystal samples safely contained in a stasis field. Grax approached Zara, his earlier arrogance replaced by grudging respect. "That was impressive, human. Perhaps I underestimated you." Zara managed a tired grin. "It's a common mistake. Let's try not to make it again, shall we? We make a pretty good team when we're not trying to outdo each other." As the adrenaline of the moment faded, Zara realized something had changed. The looks she was receiving from her classmates were different now, less skeptical, more curious. She'd proven herself not just capable of surviving in extreme environments, but of thriving in them. Professor Krogath's voice cut through the excited chatter. "Well done, all of you. Especially you, Ms. Mitchell. It seems we may have underestimated the potential of Deathworlders in our program." As Zara accepted congratulations from her classmates, she couldn't help but feel a surge of pride. She was representing humanity here, showing the galaxy what her species was capable of, and this, she realized, was just the beginning. The underwater challenge had been daunting, but she knew there would be greater tests to come. But for now, as she stood dripping alien seawater onto the floor of the simulation chamber, Zara allowed herself a moment of pure, unadulterated triumph. She was a Deathworlder, an Earthling, and she was ready for whatever the universe had to throw at her next. Surviving the void. The excitement from the underwater challenge had barely subsided when Professor Krogath announced their next assignment. "Pack your void suits, Lava," he growled, yellow eyes glinting with what Zara had come to recognize as mischievous anticipation. "We're taking a little field trip to the Nexus VI space station." A ripple of excitement passed through the class. Nexus VI was renowned throughout the galaxy as a state-of-the-art research facility, its rotating rings and gleaming solar arrays visible even from the surface of the planet. As they boarded the shuttle, Zara found herself seated between Sinra and Grax, that unlikely trio having formed a tentative alliance since the underwater incident. "I heard they're working on quantum entanglement communication at Nexus VI. Sinra's misty form pulsed with excitement. Imagine being able to communicate instantaneously across the galaxy. Brax snorted, a sound that bubbled through his breathing apparatus. Pah! Give me a good old-fashioned subspace relay any day. Less chance of accidentally teleporting your brain into a sun. Zara chuckled, still marveling at the casual way her alien classmates discussed technology that would be considered pure science fiction back on Earth. Well, I'm just excited to see a real space station up close. The IS is impressive and all, but it's practically ancient history compared to this. The journey was short, the shuttle's advanced propulsion system allowing them to breach Nexus Prime's atmosphere and reach the station in a matter of minutes. As they approached, Zara pressed her face to the viewport, drinking in a sight of the massive structure. Nexus VI was a marvel of engineering, its multiple rotating sections connected by graceful spokes to a central hub. Solar arrays stretched out like gossamer wings, capturing the light from the system's binary stars. Their shuttle docked smoothly with one of the station's many airlocks. As the class disembarked, they were greeted by a holographic avatar, a shimmering, translucent figure that Zara's translator identified as the station's AA. "Welcome to Nexus VI," the AA's melodious voice echoed through the docking bay. "I am AIA, the station's primary interface. Please ensure your environmental suits are properly sealed before we begin the tour." Professor Krogath stepped forward, his massive form dwarfing the holographic avatar. "Thank you, AIA. Now, class, this is not just a sightseeing tour. Your assignment is to identify potential survival challenges unique to this environment and propose solutions. Remember, in space, no one can hear you scream." Zara quipped under her breath, earning a ripple of amusement from Sinra and a confused look from Grax. "Every mistake could be your last," Krogath finished, shooting Zara a look that was equal parts exasperation and amusement. "Now, let's begin." The tour was fascinating. They visited laboratories where scientists of various species worked on projects that pushed the boundaries of known physics. They observed the massive hydroponics bays that supplied the station with food and oxygen. Zara was particularly impressed by the quantum computer core, a room filled with swirling holographic equations that made her head spin just looking at them. It was as they were passing through a section of the station dedicated to zero-gravity manufacturing that things went wrong. Without warning, alarms began blaring throughout the station. Aria's avatar flickered, its normally smooth voice distorted with static. Emergency protocols activated. Unidentified gravitational anomaly detected in Sector 7. All personnel, please proceed to emergency shelters immediately. Panic erupted among the station's staff and visitors. Professor Krogath's voice boomed over the chaos. "Stay calm. This is not a drill. Follow emergency procedures and..." His words were cut off as a violent shudder ran through the station. Zara felt a sickening lurch in her stomach as the artificial gravity fluctuated wildly. Around her, objects and people began to float, the sudden zero causing further panic. "Professor," Zara shouted, activating the magnetic boots of her suit to stay anchored. "What's happening?" Krogath's face was grim. "Unknown, but we need to get to a secure area. The station's structural integrity may be compromised." As if in response to his words, a terrible groaning sound echoed through the corridor. Zara watched in horror as a seam in the wall began to split, wisps of atmosphere escaping into the void of space. "Breach!" someone screamed. The panic reached fever pitch as people scrambled for emergency patches and sealant foam. Zara's mind raced. They needed to seal the breach, but more importantly, they needed to address the root cause. Whatever gravitational anomaly AIA had detected was likely the source of the problem. "Professor," she called out, an idea forming. "The quantum computer core. Could it be causing this?" Krogath's eyes widened in realization. Of course, if the containment field for their gravity experiments failed. "It could create a localized singularity," Zara finished. "We need to shut it down." The professor nodded grimly. "Agreed. But the core is in Sector 7, right where the anomaly was detected. It's too dangerous. Zara set her jaw, determination flooding through her. I'll go. My suit's designed to withstand extreme gravitational forces, remember? Deathworlder perks. Before Krogath could protest, Zara was moving. She pushed off from the wall, using her suit's thrusters to navigate the now gravity-less corridors. Behind her, she could hear the professor organizing the rest of the class to help with evacuation and emergency repairs. As she approached Sector 7, the effects of the gravitational anomaly became more pronounced. Debris floated past her at alarming speeds, forced into erratic orbits by the fluctuating gravity. Her suit's sensors were going haywire, unable to get consistent readings. The door to the quantum core was warped, jammed half open by the gravitational forces. Zara squeezed through, finding herself in a scene of scientific chaos. The holographic equations she'd admired earlier were now a maelstrom of light and data, swirling around a dark, pulsing center that seemed to devour light itself. A micro-singularity, Zara realized with a mixture of awe and terror. The gravity experiment had created a miniature black hole. She spotted the main control panel on the far side of the room, but reaching it would mean passing dangerously close to the singularity. Taking a deep breath, Zara activated her suit's emergency power reserves. The extra thrust would give her the speed she needed, but it was risky. One miscalculation and she'd be pulled into the singularity's event horizon. With a silent prayer to whatever cosmic forces might be listening, Zara launched herself across the room. The pull of the singularity was immense, tugging at her suit and threatening to drag her off course. Gritting her teeth, she pushed her thrusters to their limit. For a heart-stopping moment, she thought she miscalculated. The singularity's pull increased, and she felt herself being drawn towards its maw. But then, with a final burst of speed, she crashed into the control panel. Her fingers flew over the controls, initiating the emergency shutdown sequence. Warning messages flashed across the screen, the system resistant to such a sudden termination. But Zara persisted, overriding safety protocols and forcing the system to comply. With a sound like reality itself tearing, the singularity began to collapse. The swirling equations flickered and died, plunging the room into darkness. For a terrifying moment, Zara thought she failed. Then, slowly, blessedly, she felt the return of normal gravity as the station's systems reasserted control. Exhausted and shaking, Zara made her way back to the main corridor. She was met by a crowd of stunned faces, her classmates, station personnel, and a very impressed-looking Professor Krogath. "Ms. Mitchell," the professor rumbled, "I believe you've just rewritten the curriculum for our crisis management class." A cheer went up from the assembled crowd. Sinra's misty form enveloped Zara in what she assumed was the alien equivalent of a hug, while Grax clapped her on the back with enough force to make her stumble. As the adrenaline faded, Zara felt a profound sense of accomplishment wash over her. She'd faced down a black hole and lived to tell the tale. More than that, she'd saved the station and everyone on it. Auria's avatar materialized, its form now stable and clear. "On behalf of Nexus VII, I extend our deepest gratitude, Zara Mitchell of Earth. Your quick thinking and bravery have averted a catastrophe of galactic proportions." Zara blushed, unused to such praise. "I just did what needed to be done. Anyone would have done the same." Professor Krogath shook his head, a rare smile on his craggy features. "Not anyone, Ms. Mitchell. It takes a special kind of individual to run towards danger when everyone else is running away. It takes a Deathworlder." As the class began their journey back to Nexus Prime, Zara found herself the center of attention. Her classmates peppered her with questions about Earth, about human physiology, about what it was like to grow up on a world that the rest of the galaxy considered too dangerous to inhabit. She answered as best she could, but her mind was already racing ahead to the next challenge. The universe, she was learning, was full of wonders and terrors beyond imagination. But with each obstacle overcome, Each crisis averted, she was proving that humanity had a place among the stars. Zara gazed out the shuttle viewport at the vast expanse of space. Somewhere out there, Earth continued its lonely orbit around an unremarkable yellow star. But its children, she realized, were anything but unremarkable. They were Deathworlders, survivors, explorers. And the galaxy was only just beginning to understand what that meant. The final exam, Hextopia. The day had finally arrived. As Zara stood in the Academy's hangar bay, surrounded by her alien classmates, she could feel a tension in the air. It was palpable, a thick miasma of anxiety and excitement that seemed to pulse with each beat of her heart. Professor Krogath's voice cut through the nervous chatter like a plasma torch through Dura steel. Attention, Lava. Today you face your final exam. Today, you prove whether you are worthy of calling yourselves survivors. The professor's yellow eyes swept over the assembled students, lingering for a moment on Zara. Your destination is Hextopia, officially designated as Thanatos VI. It is, without exaggeration, the most dangerous planet in the known universe. A holographic display flickered to life, showing a world that looked like it had been dreamed up by a particularly sadistic sci-fi author. The planet's surface was a nightmare landscape of crystalline spires and bottomless chasms, with oceans of liquid metal and skies that crackled with perpetual lightning storms. Hextopia, Krogath continued, boasts an atmosphere of fluorine and chlorine, gravity that fluctuates wildly depending on your location, and a local ecosystem that regards anything not native to the planet as a walking buffet. Zara felt a mix of terror and exhilaration. This was it, the ultimate test of everything she'd learned at the Academy. Your task is simple, the professor said, though his tone suggested it was anything but. Survive for 24 standard hours. Reach the extraction point with your team intact and you pass. Fail, and well, let's just say the cleanup crews are on standby. Teams were quickly assembled. To Zara's relief, she found herself grouped with Sinra and Grax, along with 2 other classmates. Kerful, a silicon-based life form that resembled a sentient crystal, and Zorp, a gelatinous blob with remarkable shape-shifting abilities. As they boarded their descent pod, Zara couldn't help but reflect on how far she'd come, from being the odd human out to leading a team of diverse alien species into the most hostile environment imaginable. It was surreal. The descent was rough. Hextopia's turbulent atmosphere buffeted their pod, threatening to tear it apart. Zara gripped her harness, knuckles white, as they plummeted towards the surface. With a bone-jarring impact, they landed. For a moment, all was still. Then, with a hiss of equalizing pressure, the pod's door slid open, revealing the hellscape beyond. Well, Zara said, her voice steady despite the fear gnawing at her gut, let's not keep our adoring public waiting. They stepped out onto Hextopia's surface, their environmental suits immediately going into overdrive to protect them from the caustic atmosphere. The ground beneath their feet shifted and writhed as if alive. In the distance, crystalline structures pulsed with an eerie internal light. First priority, Zara said, falling easily into the leadership role, is to find shelter. We need a defensible position to plan our next move. Kerful's crystalline form vibrated in agreement. Agreed. My sensors detect a cave system approximately 500 meters to the north. It appears to be stable, relatively speaking. As they made their way towards the caves, the true nature of Hextopia revealed itself. The very air seemed alive with malevolence. Strange, ethereal creatures flitted at the edge of vision, disappearing when looked at directly. The ground periodically rippled with tremors, forcing them to constantly adjust their footing. They were halfway to the caves when the first real challenge presented itself. A chasm suddenly opened up before them, the ground splitting apart with a sound like tearing metal. Zara reacted instinctively, grabbing Sinra and leaping back. Grax's powerful legs propelled him to safety, while Kerful and Zorp, with their unique physiologies, simply flowed around the danger. Well, Grax gurgled, his amphibious features arranged in what Zara had learned was a grin. This is certainly living up to its reputation. Zara nodded grimly. We need to find a way across. Any ideas? Zorp's gelatinous form rippled with excitement. I could extend myself across the gap, form a bridge. Too risky, Zara countered. We don't know how wide the chasm is, or what's at the bottom. We need another way. It was Kfal who provided the solution. The crystalline alien extended a tendril of its form, which rapidly grew and solidified into a shimmering bridge. My structure can withstand the atmospheric corrosion for approximately 10 minutes, Kfal chimed. We must hurry. They crossed quickly, Zara bringing up the rear to ensure everyone made it safely. As soon as they were across, Kfal reabsorbed the bridge, its crystalline form pulsing with the effort. The caves, when they reached them, provided little comfort. The walls seemed to shift and breathe, and strange, phosphorescent fungi cast an eerie glow over everything. But it was shelter, and for the moment, that was enough. As the team caught their breath, Zara's mind raced. They had shelter, but they still needed to survive for 23 more hours and reach the extraction point, on a planet that seemed designed to kill them in as many ways as possible. Okay, team, she said, her voice filled with a confidence she didn't entirely feel. We've got a long way to go, but we've already proven we can handle whatever this planet throws at us. Let's break this down into manageable steps. Over the next few hours, they faced challenge after challenge. They navigated fields of crystals that responded to sound by exploding into clouds of razor-sharp shards. They outmaneuvered predators that could phase through solid matter. They even survived a gravity storm that had them clinging to the ground one moment and floating helplessly the next. Through it all, Zara's leadership shone. She drew on everything she'd learned, both at the academy and in her life on Earth. When Grax was injured by a corrosive spore, she used techniques from her high school chemistry class to neutralize the acid. When they were cornered by a pack of phase-shifting predators, she remembered her Earth survival training, using the environment to their advantage to confuse and evade the creatures. But it was during the final push to the extraction point that Zara truly proved her worth. They were close, so tantalizingly close, when disaster struck. A massive tremor shook the ground, opening up fissures all around them. The extraction point, a shimmering energy field visible in the distance, began to flicker and destabilize. The planet's tectonic activity is interfering with the extraction field, Kfal chimed, its crystalline form vibrating with alarm. If we don't reach it soon, it will collapse. Zara looked at her team. They were exhausted, injured, pushed to their absolute limits. But in their eyes or equivalent sensory organs, she saw determination. They had come too far to fail now. All right, she said, her voice steady and confident. Here's the plan. Grax, you're the strongest swimmer. If those fissures fill with liquid metal, you're our best bet to get across. Sinra, use your gaseous form to scout ahead. Find us the safest path. Kfal, be ready to create bridges or shields as needed. Zorp, you're our secret weapon. If all else fails, you can flow through the smallest cracks and activate the extraction field manually. As they made their final push, Hextopia seemed to throw everything it had at them. The sky rained shards of crystallized lightning. The ground beneath their feet alternated between the consistency of quicksand and solid steel. Strange, wailing sounds echoed from all around, disorienting and terrifying. But they pressed on. Zara's plan worked beautifully, each team member's unique abilities complementing the others perfectly. They crossed liquid metal rivers on bridges of living crystal, navigated through storms of corrosive gas thanks to Xinra's scouting, and overcame seemingly impassable obstacles with Zorp's shape-shifting abilities. With seconds to spare, they reached the extraction point. As the energy field enveloped them, transporting them to safety, Zara felt a surge of triumph so powerful it brought tears to her eyes. They had done it. They had survived Hextopia. As they materialized in the Academy's teleportation bay, they were met with a sight none of them had expected. The entire faculty was there, along with what looked like representatives from various galactic institutions. And at the forefront, looking both impressed and slightly shell-shocked, was Professor Krogath. "Congratulations," he rumbled, his usual gruffness tempered with genuine admiration. "In all my years of teaching, I've never seen a team perform so exceptionally under such extreme conditions." Zora, exhausted but elated, managed a tired smile. "Thank you, Professor. But it wasn't just me. Every member of this team proved their worth out there." As commendations were given and celebrations began, Zara found herself reflecting on her journey. She had come to the academy as an outsider, a curiosity from a deaf world. She was leaving as a leader, having proven not just her own worth, but the potential of humanity as a whole. The galaxy, she realized, would never look at Earth or humans the same way again. And she, Zara Mitchell, had been the one to change that perception. As her teammates gathered around her, their alien features arranged in expressions of joy and camaraderie, Zara felt a profound sense of belonging. She had found her place among the stars, bridging the gap between Earth and the wider galactic community. The Hextopia exam was over, but Zara knew this was just the beginning. There were more challenges to face, more frontiers to explore, and she was ready for all of it. After all, she was a Deathworlder, and Deathworlders never back down from a challenge. Graduation and beyond. The great amphitheater of the Intergalactic Academy of Survival Sciences was filled to capacity. Beings from across the galaxy, representing species Zara had only read about in xenobiology texts, crowded the tiered seating. The air buzzed with cacophony of languages, all blending together in a symphony of excitement and anticipation. Zara stood backstage, adjusting her ceremonial robes. They were a far cry from the environmental suits and protective gear she'd become accustomed to over the past year. The soft, shimmering fabric seemed to change color as she moved, cycling through hues that represented the various extreme environments she'd mastered. Nervous Deathworlder. The familiar gurgle of Grax's voice made her turn. Her amphibious classmate stood there, his own robes draped over his hulking form in a way that might have been comical, if not for the pride evident in his posture. Zara grinned, terrified. Give me a pack of face-shifting predators any day over public speaking. A ripple of amusement passed through Sinra's misty form as they materialized beside her. After everything we've been through, I find it hard to believe that a mere ceremony could unsettle you, Zara. Before she could respond, a hush fell over the amphitheater. Professor Krogath's gravelly voice boomed out, amplified by the advanced acoustics of the venue. Esteemed guests, faculty, and graduating class of the Intergalactic Academy of Survival Sciences, we are gathered here today to celebrate not just the accomplishments of these exceptional individuals, but a shift in our understanding of what it means to survive and thrive in this vast, often hostile universe. Zara felt a flutter of anticipation in her stomach. This was it, the culmination of a year filled with challenges that would have seemed impossible when she first arrived on Nexus Prime. This year's class has shown remarkable adaptability, ingenuity, and courage, Krogath continued. But one student in particular has forced us to reevaluate our preconceptions about species capability and the very nature of survival itself. A wriggle of murmurs passed through the crowd. Zara could feel the eyes of her classmates on her, a mix of admiration and friendly envy. Zara Mitchell of Earth, Krogath's voice softened slightly, losing some of its usual gruffness. Please step forward. Taking a deep breath, Zara walked onto the stage. The lights were blinding, the crowd a sea of alien faces all focused intently on her. She spotted familiar figures, the quantum researchers from Nexus VII, representatives from worlds she'd helped save during their training missions, even a delegation from the Galactic Council itself. Ms. Mitchell, Krogath said, his yellow eyes fixed on her with an intensity that would have once made her flinch. Now, she met his gaze steadily. When you arrived at this academy, many doubted the wisdom of admitting a being from a Class 12 Deathworld. Some feared you would be a liability, unable to adapt to environments so different from your homeworld. He paused, a rare smile creasing his craggy features. I have never been so pleased to be proven wrong. A cheer went up from the crowd, startling in its intensity. Zara felt her cheeks flush with a mix of embarrassment and pride. Your performance in the Aquarius Prime simulation showcased not just physical adaptability, but quick thinking and selfless teamwork. Your actions during the Nexus VI crisis saved countless lives and advanced our understanding of gravitational anomalies. And your leadership on Hextopia. Krogath shook his head in amazement. Well, let's just say you've rewritten our textbooks on extreme environment survival. He turned to address the crowd. But beyond these individual accomplishments, Ms. Mitchell has done something even more remarkable. She has shown us that the very traits we once considered liabilities, the adaptations necessary to survive on a death world, can be incredible assets in facing the challenges of our universe. Zara felt a swell of emotion. She thought of Earth, of the long history of human survival against seemingly impossible odds, of the countless generations that have faced natural disasters, climate shifts, predators, and their own destructive tendencies, and yet had always found a way to persevere. It is my great honor, Krogath continued, to present Zara Mitchell with not only her diploma from the Intergalactic Academy of Survival Sciences, but also this. He held up a small glowing orb, the Galactic Medal of Valor, the highest honor our united species can bestow. The crowd erupted in applause. Zara stepped forward, her hand trembling slightly as she accepted the medal. Its warm glow seemed to pulse in time with her heartbeat. "Thank you, Professor," she said, her voice carrying clearly across the amphitheater. "But this honor doesn't belong to me alone. It belongs to every member of my team who trusted a strange Deathworlder and worked together to overcome impossible odds." She turned to face the audience. "And it belongs to humanity as a whole. We may come from a world that the galaxy considers dangerous, but that danger has forged us into a species of survivors, of problem solvers. We don't just endure hardship, we learn from it, grow stronger because of it." Zara's voice grew passionate, her words flowing from a place of deep conviction. The challenges we face as a galactic community are immense. Climate collapse, cosmic disasters, the very laws of physics conspiring against us. But I believe that by working together, by combining the unique strengths of all our species, there is no obstacle we cannot overcome. The applause that followed was deafening. Zara saw beings of all shapes and sizes rising to their feet, or equivalent appendages, their auras pulsing with colors she'd learned to recognize as excitement and hope. As the ceremony concluded, and Zara was swarmed by well-wishers, she caught sight of a familiar face in the crowd. Ambassador Chen, Earth's representative to the Galactic Council, was beaming with pride. "Ms. Mitchell," the ambassador said as she approached, "your achievements here have opened doors we never thought possible. The Council is buzzing with talks of increased cooperation, scientific exchanges, even the possibility of establishing a permanent human presence in galactic affairs." Zara's mind reeled at the implications. That's incredible. But surely one student's performance can't have that much impact. Ambassador Chen smiled knowingly. "You've shown the galaxy what humans are capable of, Zara. You've turned our perceived weaknesses into strengths. And in doing so, you've made humanity a player on the galactic stage." As the celebrations continued around her, Zara found herself gazing up at the star-filled sky, visible through the amphitheater's transparent dome. Somewhere out there was Earth, the death world that had shaped her species, and beyond it lay a universe filled with wonders and terrors beyond imagination. But she wasn't afraid, she was excited, because now humanity had a chance to show the galaxy what Deathworlders could really do when given the opportunity. Sinra's misty form coalesced beside her. "So Zara, what's next for the famous human Deathworlder?" Zara grinned, her eyes still fixed on the stars. "You know, Sinrai, I think we're just getting started. The galaxy's a big place, full of challenges we haven't even imagined yet, and I, for one, can't wait to face them." As she stood there, surrounded by friends from across the cosmos, Zara felt a profound sense of possibility. The story of humanity's place in the galaxy was just beginning, and she, Zara Mitchell, Deathworlder and survivor, was ready to help write the next chapter. After all, that's what Deathworlders do best. They adapt, they overcome, and they never ever give up. The end, or perhaps just the beginning.